When I decided to start self-publishing 6 years ago, there was so much to learn about the topic. I did months of research while I edited my first book and started publishing. Now, 9 books later, there's a lot I learned along the way. So if you want to learn from my mistakes, keep watching. Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm a full-time university writing instructor and a part-time content creator and indie author with 9 romance novels currently published, working on my 10th one at the moment. Welcome back if you're one of my lovely returning friends. It's great to have you all here. I just wanted to sit down and have a bit of a chatty chat about all the things that I wish I had known when I first started self-publishing. For every book that I've published over the past 9, there's been at least one thing in that publishing process that I've been like, oh, I really wish I knew that when I was doing all the other ones. Some mistakes, I put that in air quotes because, you know, it's all a journey. We're all on our own journey. You know, it is what it is. You learn as you go and you do better with the next one. So I'm discussing these as mistakes, but I embrace the mistakes. I have let go of perfection and I am just doing my best. But yeah, I just thought it might be fun to sit down now that I'm 9 books in, 6 years into this whole indie author self-publishing malarkey. There's a lot I've learned. First thing that I wish I had done from the beginning is slow down. I wish I'd spent the time to get my manuscript edited and ready and like to a point that I felt really, really confident about it. Get the formatting done, all of that, and then researched being an indie author. Like, I feel like I was doing all that research at the same time that I was editing, and it got very confusing about all the different rules and everything I needed to know and all the decisions I needed to make. I wish I'd split it up. I wish I'd spent a year editing and preparing my book and getting it as done as possible, and then another year researching everything and figuring out what exactly I wanted to do from like an author business perspective. I had set in my head Christmas, I was gonna have that book out by Christmas of 2019, and nothing was going to make me change that deadline, and I should have just delayed it. No one really would have cared. The only people who knew about it was my YouTube audience, and you all are so lovely. I know you would have understood. People love that book. I get really good feedback off that book, but I do think I would personally feel more confident about that book if I had slowed down and really spent more time just on the book and then done all the like publishing and business side of things, all that research separately. So slow down. Focus on making the best book you possibly can, then worry about and learn as much of the publishing stuff. Hopefully, the rest of this video will help you will help you with some of those things. One of the things that I didn't really think about at the time, and it wouldn't have applied to me at the time, but is definitely something to think about if you don't yet have much of a social media presence and if no one yet knows that you want to write a book, and that is the topic of pen names. I get asked about pen names every now and then. It wouldn't have made a difference for me because I was already so online, and I knew that my online platforms were how I was going to market this book. So I was already on Instagram, on YouTube, under my real name. So I was already out there completely as me. But in today's social media landscape, if you are starting out and if you don't yet have a social media presence and your public legal name is not already out there attached to your face and to your work, you might want to give the topic of a pen name very serious consideration. It is really hard if you do end up getting really big, and like I am not at this level, so it's not really affected me. If people have your legal name, they have the information they need to do some not so nice things. And so from a personal security and privacy standpoint, pen names are not perfect. I think there's still ways for people to find out. I do know if you copyright your books, which I still haven't, I'm a very bad author in that respect, but the name that you put on your copyright registration is public. So when you register for copyright, use a PO box and a pen name or a publisher name that you've legally created. If you've created, don't make stuff up, but put information that's not tied to your legal name on your copyright registration. Look up, that's a topic for another video. But yeah, it's something that, knowing how the social media and internet landscape has changed just over the past like 10 years, I kind of wish I could go back and make sure that things are completely anonymous and much harder to trace back to my real offline life. We like our names. We want to be known for the work that we do. You know, I like knowing that when someone reads my book that my name is on the cover, and that after I'm gone, my name will be on those covers. My books, I've talked about this before, I get really emotional about it, but my books are my legacy. My books are the main thing I am going to leave behind. And even if I don't become a huge famous author, I've sold enough copies of my books that there's still a good chance that one day someone will be looking through their grandparents' bookshelves and they might find an old copy of one of my books after I've died. And like, I just really like that. So I might have still eventually decided to publish under my legal name, but it is something, at least from a information, privacy, and security perspective, to give it serious consideration before you decide whether or not to use a pen name. The next big thing, ISBNs. This is a very important topic. Long story short, buy your own ISBNs. But here's why. If you use the free ISBN that is offered by most publishing platforms, so Amazon will let you get a free ISBN through them, Ingram Spark, same thing. I think most of them will offer you a free ISBN. If you do that, you can only publish your book through that platform. And that just makes it really hard to make your books available through as many retailers and therefore to as many customers or consumers as possible. So buying your own ISBNs, even if you do just publish through one platform from the beginning, by owning your own ISBN, you will then have the option, if you decide to publish that book wide across multiple platforms, making your book available in as many different places as possible. So it's definitely something to consider. That being said, ISBNs here in the US are really expensive. So I think that is why the free ISBNs are so tempting. If you go the route of the free ISBN, you can, and this is something I plan on doing one day, I'm just not there yet, you can unpublish your first edition, which was published under that free ISBN, and then publish a second edition on your own ISBN. That first edition will always still be available on Amazon or on Ingram. Well, on Ingram, I don't know. On Amazon, that your product page for your first edition will always be there, because people who bought it need to be able to resell it if they want to. That first edition will never go away, but it can be shown as out of print, and the second edition is what everyone will buy. So it's not a case of if you use the free ISBN, you're just screwed, you're locked into that, and your book will never go anywhere. You can unpublish and republish a second edition, but that takes time, that takes effort. You do need to make some sort of substantial difference. So either a new cover or adding bonus content in the back, adding an extra epilogue or something like that. It is like 10% of the book or some percentage has to be different than the first edition in order to justify a second edition. Amazon in particular has specific rules. Those rules might vary per platform, but it is possible. But as expensive as ISBNs are, I do advise just buying that from the beginning. So in some countries like Canada, they're free. So if you're Canadian, yay, you don't have to worry. Just get an ISBN. It's registered to you in your own name and is not attached to any one particular publishing platform. If you're in the US, like I am. One ISBN is about $125. You can get a pack of 10 for around $300, or a pack of 100, and these are virtual digital packs. You don't actually get physical ISBNs, but you can get a block of 100 for around $600. So obviously the cost per ISBN is much lower if you buy them in bulk. I would say if you don't know if you're going to like self-publishing, start by buying one and just see how you get on. But if you then decide you do want to go forward and publish a whole series, then you might want to at least do them in the groupings of 10. I am personally saving up until I can buy a pack of 100, and then I will be set for a while. But $600 going out the door at once, a little bit much. I really wish that I had done the 125 for the first book and then done the 10 for 300 starting with book 2, and I would still, if I started with book 2, I'd still have 2 of those ISBNs left. So yeah, again, learn from my mistakes. Page color. Things that are really hard to find online as far as like specific rules. But yeah, one thing I didn't know, cream pages are for fiction and white pages are for nonfiction. Guess what color most of my books are published in? White pages. Also, cream pages are ever so slightly thicker. So a book that's the same number, so 2 books of the same page length will look slightly thicker in cream pages than in white pages, apparently. And apparently some readers have really strong preferences. I've actually seen Instagram reels and stuff where people are like, if I see a book is printed in white pages, I refuse to read it. Secondary, like just bit of advice, tip sliding in here. You're going to see lots of things about reader preferences and readers talking online about things that really grind their gears that they like or don't like. You have to just ignore it. You are not going to appease everyone. I have not had a single reader reach out to me and complain about the fact that my books are in white pages. It's just one of those things that nags at the back of my brain, knowing that, oh, is this one of those things that's just really making it obvious I'm an indie author and not traditionally published? So yeah, apparently there is a difference and a distinction between white pages and cream pages. Also, I wasn't paying attention. So A Brave Start, my first book, is in cream pages, and then every book after that is in white. And I didn't learn about the difference until after I published the first book in the Independent Heart series. Otherwise, I could have at least had one series entirely in cream pages. But no, by the time I learned, I already had at least one book in each series being published in white pages. So yeah, cream pages for the win, apparently. Trim sizes. Another thing I didn't realize was indicative of certain genres or things like that. So all of my books are in 6x9 trim size. And I have books on my bookshelf that are other novels that are in 6x9. So it does happen, it is common, but the majority of fiction, particularly in romance these days, seems to be published and printed in 5x8 trim size. So I really would take a little measuring tape to the bookstore and measure the trim sizes of all of the current books in your genre and just see what the average is and go with that. Testing out different publishers and printers. I didn't go wide, so I was just working with KDP, but if you are going wide, I would highly recommend ordering proof copies from every platform your book is going to be available on. So KDP, Ingram Spark, Lulu, Draft Digital, Barnes & Noble Publishing. If your book is going to be available in all those different publishers, get a proof copy to see what it looks like, to get a sense of what the cover quality is, what the print quality is, what the page quality is, so that you will see what your readers are seeing. I wish that I had ordered my book in, and I would have had to do this in different batches because you get it started on one ISBN, but I wish that I had ordered my proof copy in white and cream pages with a glossy versus a matte cover. I wish I'd seen what those different options looked like. I've never seen what my covers look like on a glossy cover, and I kind of am curious. I'd like to know. Order proof copies in the different configurations and see what those are going to look like before you make a decision. And like, if I had done that with my second book, I would have noticed that I had inadvertently switched to white pages instead of cream pages like book 1 was. Have a strong marketing plan from the start. I really wish that, in addition to slowing down at the beginning and spending a year just looking at the logistics of indie publishing, I also wish I'd spent more time specifically looking at marketing, specifically marketing for indie authors, because you might be really good at marketing in your day job for other things, other businesses. Marketing for books is very different. There's a lot of similarities and overlaps, but there's a lot of differences. Specifically, marketing books as an indie author. Marketing books as an indie author is different than marketing books as a traditionally published author. What indie authors have to do compared to trad pub authors, even though trad pub authors are having to do more and more of their own marketing, they still have some level of assistance on average from a publisher. That's very different from the indie market. Readers of indie books are very different from readers who don't read indie books. So you're not marketing to the entire reading public. You are marketing specifically to readers who are open and willing to read books by indie authors. It is really hard for readers who are just not aware of indie authors and self-publishing, who still buy into the stereotype of self-publishing. It is really hard to get your indie book visible to those readers and then to make them actually want to read your book. And there are certain things that have happened in the online book spaces recently that I'm not going to get into, but that I think have potentially made it even harder for people to want to dive into the world of indie authors and reading the books of indie authors. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Have a strong marketing plan from the start. Have your author platform set up. Be ready to capture email addresses. The first several of my books, I did not have an email list, so there was no link to sign up to that at the back of my books. Anyone who bought one of my books in those first couple years that I was publishing, I have no way of knowing if they're still following and reading and getting my books, because I never captured them on a list. So have a strong marketing plan, have your newsletter list ready, have a Substack or a Patreon or something that you can use to build a community, a Facebook page, like whatever works for your genre, for the demographic of your ideal reader, but have something that you can use to be gathering that information or collecting those people in a space that you control, unlike social media like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or whatever. Because if YouTube deactivated my channel, if a social media app gets banned, when the TikTok ban was like a looming threat, there were a lot of indie authors absolutely panicking, because that was their sole way of interacting with their readers. You never want to be in that position. So having a strong marketing plan, understanding how you're going to reach out to your audience, and understanding how you're going to maintain that audience is a really good thing to have before you publish your first book. The importance of alpha and beta readers. So you will see a lot of people in the indie author advice spaces telling you you can't edit your own book. No author should edit their own book. I've edited all of my books. I've not hired an outside editor a single time. I do all my own developmental editing, my own line editing, my own copy editing, my own formatting, proofreading, all of it. But I rely heavily on alpha and beta readers. Just because you don't hire an editor doesn't mean no one else gets to read your work before you publish it. And the more people who read it and can give you feedback, and the better quality that feedback. So picking the right people to be your alpha and beta readers are really, really important. And these have to be people that not only do you trust, but that you are willing to listen to their feedback, even if it's not what you want to hear. My alpha and beta readers have been chosen very specifically to be people who I know will tell me when something isn't working, but they will tell me in a way that doesn't completely crush my spirit and make me want to give up. So their criticism is always constructive, but it's also kind and given from a perspective of honestly wanting me to make the book as good as possible, and who love my writing and love my books, and so the feedback they give me is to help me make the books as amazing as they know they can be, and not letting me just kind of skate by on a bare minimum effort. They make me put everything I have into these books. If at the end of the day you don't like my book, I still take responsibility, but even though I don't hire an outside editor, I do have a very tight team of very trusted voices who are giving me feedback and helping me make these books the best that they possibly can be. And so I highly recommend finding people who will read your book and give you honest feedback, and not just say, yeah, it was great, or yeah, I didn't like it. People who can articulate why they loved it, as well as why they didn't like it, and what is working, what isn't working, why isn't that thing working. They don't give me suggestions. Sometimes they do, but for the most part, I will just be told, yeah, this scene's just falling flat, or this character's decision doesn't feel believable. My reader doesn't know how to fix it. But the fact that they can articulate why something just didn't feel right, that then helps me figure out how I can go in and fix it. Understanding the different types of editing and how much time they take. So a lot of people, especially if they're new to writing, especially if they're new to indie publishing, they think editing is editing. And editing is actually a few different things. There's developmental editing, there's line editing, there's copy editing, and there's proofreading. Each of those steps can be done in a few different stages and passes. So I will do at least 2, if not 3 or 4 developmental edit passes. I might then do 1 line edit pass and then 2 copy edit passes, because the more you've read the book, the more everything starts to blur together. And so the more times I can read it, the less things start slipping through the net. And I have found that every time I read through my book, even that final read through, I'm still catching things. So stuff does get missed. Usually when I'm having my readers do the beta read, which is when it is almost ready for copy editing, I will tell them, if you find an error or a typo or something, flag it and let me know, so I start getting them active to help me. So yeah, understand the different types of editing, learn either how long it will take if you outsource that, what is the turnaround time with the editor that you've hired for either or all of those different editing stages, or if you do it yourself like I do, I know how long, like it's months for developmental editing, and then I try to give myself at least 2 weeks per round of line editing, copy editing, and proofreading. I cannot proofread a whole book in 3 days. I will go out of my mind, and I will absolutely miss things. So when it comes down to the proofreading stage, I am reading very, very slowly with like a ruler, a line under each line as I'm scrolling, so that I am only reading 1 line of text at a time to make sure that I am catching as many things as possible if anything has slipped through the net up to that point. It's not just, oh, I'm going to take 3 months to write my book and then 3 months to edit my book and then publish it within 6 months. That's never going to happen for me. It might happen for other people, but again, you need to learn how long each of those steps are going to take to factor that into your timeline, because often for a lot of first-time authors, what slows them down and what leads to delays is not understanding from the beginning how long editing can take, and then it takes longer than they expect, and that pushes things back. So understanding the full timeline of writing and publishing and how long all of that is going to take is really important, because I definitely was struggling with my first book, and I really wish that I had been more aware of that and had just given myself more time. Again, slow down. There's no rush. You're not going to make a fortune off your first book anyway, which I talked about last Monday. So yeah, you're not going to earn a fortune off your first book in your first year. So having it release a few months or even a year later than you originally planned is not going to make that much difference in the long term, but could and most likely will lead to a better quality book once you do publish it. One thing you also need to be aware of, and that I wish I'd known is how expensive it can be. I have done all of my publishing on a shoestring budget. I've not really spent a whole lot. I didn't spend anything on my first book, and everything spent on the books after were paid for with royalties I'd earned from the books. So when I bought the vellum formatting software, that was like $269. All of that money came from the royalties off of my first book. And I would say, if you have a Mac, especially because it's only available for Macs, for Apple computers, but vellum, absolutely worth its weight in gold. That being said, these days there might be more formatting tools that are cheaper or whatever, or that run on Windows, but unless you are a genius with Microsoft Word or Adobe InDesign, formatting your book yourself is going to be a massive headache. So you can find book formatters for not that much money, or if you know you're going to publish a lot, invest in formatting software like vellum. It has definitely paid for itself over the years, and the 8 books that I have used and formatted on vellum. But if you need to hire an editor, if you need to hire a cover designer, do all that research ahead of time. Like, as soon as you think you want to publish a book, start saving your pennies. You can do publishing on a DIY shoestring budget, but it's going to cost you time. Or you can save yourself time but spend a significant amount of money on all of these different steps. So when you make the decision to self-publish, you need to decide, are you time rich and money poor or time poor and money rich? If you're time poor and money poor, I have no advice for you. But I was definitely in the situation where I could take the time to do things myself, but I didn't have the money to invest in things. So that's how I made that decision. So you want to know what things are worth the cost and what things are worth doing yourself. I would say, with everything I've learned, if I was starting over from scratch, I would definitely buy my own ISBNs. Definitely buy my own ISBNs. And if I could afford it, I would hire a cover designer. I've done all of my own covers. I do have just enough, I think, artistic and design talent that I have been able to get away with it. That being said, I think a professional illustrator or a professional cover designer probably could have made my cover designs even better. So for me, with what I feel comfortable with doing, if I did have the money, cover design is something I would outsource. But you have to be honest about what skills you possess. So I had a background in art and design and illustration, so I felt like I could probably manage my own covers. And I have a background in writing, teaching writing. My PhD is in writing, rhetorics, and literacies. I've done a lot of academic writing. I felt pretty confident about my ability to both developmental edit, but also line edit, copy edit, proofread, etc. If you are someone who struggles with grammar, you're going to at least want to outsource and hire a copy editor and a proofreader. If you are really good with grammar, but you are bad with that big picture developmental stuff, then you're probably going to want to hire a developmental editor. So you need to figure out what skills do you possess, and do you feel like you can do that particular aspect of writing, and what do you need to outsource, and then you need to figure out what that's going to cost, and if you can afford that, and if you need more time to save up for those things. And then second to last, the importance of community, both a community of writers, but also a community of readers. And those are two separate communities. There is some overlap, but those are two separate communities. I'd say within this broad YouTube community, I have people who are just readers, and I have people who are readers and writers. And so they are fellow writers who also read my books, and I am very grateful for those people. But it's important to be networking with other writers who you can reach out to and ask questions, particularly other indie authors who are at different stages in their journey, who can give you advice, you can learn from their mistakes that they've made along the way, but then also kind of paying that forward with indie authors who are kind of coming up behind you. You have to be able to check your competitive nature at the door. You're going to have people who start after you and then blow straight past you. and their books do better and their audience grows faster and all of those things. You just have to be happy for them. But that community and belonging to a community is just so important, because writing can feel so isolating. And so if you have people that you can talk to about the days when you just can't get words on the page, or how elated you feel when you have those days where you're getting so many words on the page. You know, I did a video a week or so ago from the 2 days where I just had 2 really intense days of writing, and I wrote nearly 14,000 words in about 48 hours. And it was so great to be able to text my other writer friends and say, I wrote 8,000 words today, and have them be genuinely excited for me. Like, that just made that moment so much more exciting. Community is so important, because what we do alone, but we shouldn't be doing it in a vacuum, if that makes sense. And so with building a community, this is where being on social media is really important. There's a huge community of writers on Instagram, on Blue Sky. There's a ton of us here on YouTube. AuthorTube is really friendly. Find other people doing similar work as you and just say hi in the comments. Be nice. Just start authentically engaging with people on their content, and you will build community that way. And I have definitely reached out to people and just said, hey, really like your work. And there have definitely been people who, after I've like been chatting in the DMs and stuff with them for an extended period of time, when you know when you get that vibe, and then it's like, hey, you want to like chat on Zoom or Google Meet or something? And that's totally how I made 2 of my best new best friends this year, Becca Tobar and Kaylin Grace Apple. Community is really, really important. And so also kind of related to that in social media, the last bit of advice that I would have is get all of your social handles in order. This is the thing I really wish I'd known before I got started. You don't want to start switching things up after you've started publishing. So this really hit home for me when I finally published my most recent novel, and suddenly remembered, oh yeah, I had a massive Instagram change in between the book before that one and this one. So in between Forever Love London, which is book 4 of my across the pond London-based romance series, and The Farm Shop of Second Chances, which is book 4 in my cozy small town romance series, I merged my Instagram accounts. I used to have a separate author account that was Andrea J. Severson, just like my books are published under, and I had a personal account that was under an old Instagram handle. That from when I first started Instagram. But that account had more followers, and I was just really struggling with managing 2 different accounts. And so much of the Instagram strategy advice says do not have multiple accounts. Put everything under one brand, unless your brands are so polar opposite different. You want to have things all as one. And so I decided I was going to convert the old and smaller author account into my backup account and get everyone as much as possible over to my main account. And I changed that to Andrea Jean Severson, because there was a whole thing about changing it to Andrea J. Severson, even though I'd already changed the name on the old account. It was no longer named Andrea J. Severson. I couldn't get the new one. It was a whole thing, and I've just had to let it go. So it's Andrea Jean Severson, and that is that's my Instagram. All of my other books have Andrea J. Severson, which doesn't lead to anything anymore. Now, in my case, if you just search Andrea J. Severson, I will come up. So I'm not that stressed about it, even though it probably seems like I am. I get stressed when I think about it, but at the end of the day, it's really not a big deal. But if you haven't yet changed all of these things, or if you haven't yet published and you're thinking of changing an Instagram handle or a TikTok account or a YouTube or whatever, make those changes before you publish. Because now, if I wanted to be a really professional author, I would go in and update the back matter in all of my other books. That would require going into the original files and changing it in the formatting and re-exporting and re-uploading, and what seems like it should be just a 2-second fix would probably end up being at least an hour or more per book for 8 books. And I just don't have the energy. Not when I know I'm eventually going to unpublish all of them and republish them all as second editions. So at this point, most of the people who are reading my books have already found me on social media. And so my social media is driving them to the books, not the books driving them to my social media. I'm not losing sleep over this issue, but if you are just starting out and haven't yet published, if you have been thinking about starting a new account or changing the name of an account or anything like that, if you know you want to start a Substack or a Patreon, or you haven't set up your email list yet, like, get all of that sorted out and created, and the names what you want them to be, so that that information is correct for as long as possible in the backs of your books. Otherwise, you're constantly going to have to change those. So yeah, I think that's it. And that's probably been enough. But if you have any other questions about being an indie author or anything I've talked about, please leave them in the comments below. You can leave me a smiley face emoji, because despite all these mistakes, I'm still smiling. So you can leave me a smiley face emoji to let me know which one of you lovely people have made it all the way to the end. Leave me your comments, your experiences. If you are a fellow indie author, share your advice. What do you wish you'd known from the beginning before you started? Questions that I can answer. Leave all of those sorts of things in the comments below, and we can continue the conversation down there. On your way to the comments, links to all of my things are in the description box, my newsletter, my Patreon, and all of my books. If you are so inclined to check them out, please and thank you in advance. Give the vlog a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. I think that's it for me. I need to go do some writing, and it's already 5 o'clock. I talked too much and I took too long to film this video. So I'm gonna go now, and I will talk to you all very soon in the next vlog. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Bye!